Welcome back to another segment of Demo Day where we interview Mark Mullen. Today, Mark shares how he got his first investment banking job at Daniels & Associates with Bill Daniels, billionaire, entrepreneur, and the father of cable television. Let's jump in to Demo Day.
So Bill Daniels was very well known in Colorado. This billionaire swashbuckler. He owned the basketball team, the football team, and all these things. And he had run for governor, and he owned 10% of the Lakers. Just this famous guy. So I got an interview with him, and I went to his office, and I was so nervous. I'm now 25. I'm just like trying to keep it together. And he was he was small. He's smallish. He's like 5'7". But he won the Golden Gloves champion twice. He flew 243 missions. He retired as an admiral of the Navy. He's this crazy entrepreneur that I just told you about. And he wore these cream-colored suits with a white handkerchief.
Always cream-colored suits?
He had different ones, but he wore this one more often. This is one he had. And he used to smoke these long filtered cigarettes with that long filter. So he actually looked like not this tough guy, right? I obviously got through to him that he should hire me, not knowing what I was going to do. And I spent 45 minutes with him. And by the way, in his office is all the presidents he's met. The Lakers trophies right there with his picture with Magic. I mean, just stuff. You're like, I felt like a little kid, and I was in Denver on this skyscraper in Denver. This is back, early 90s, so it was bigger then. It says Daniels on the building. And he goes, okay, nice to meet you. And there was no like job. It wasn't like I was applying for a job. There was no like job. He was just trying to build talent. And as I get up to walk out, his office is really big, old school big. And as I'm about to cross over the threshold of the door, he goes, Mullen, because he had this deep voice because smoking or something. And I turn around and he says, I spent my whole life putting my name on the building. Don't you fuck it up. And I was hired. And I actually say that to every investment we ever make. Don't you fuck it up after we invest. It's a loving thing,
yeah,
right? It's a loving thing. And it's one of those things where you wish you had, there's no recording of this event. There's no paper. It's just in my head. And maybe I keep revising it, but this is the way I remember it.
Yeah.
And so it was a special moment. And I got hired, and he goes, go sit in I'll have what's her name take you back. And I go sit down, and I'm just like, he didn't hire me at that point. He just said that. And then 10 minutes later, I swear to God, he used to talk to the whole office, 40 people in Denver, over the intercom.
Just like...
Yeah. Mark Mullen still here? That's what he said. Mark Mullen still here? Come back to my office, please. And I'm like, God is speaking to me through the speakers. And again, I'm like, what? And I had this bad suit on, right? Like this bad brown suit or something on. And I go in to talk to him. He's like, I've been trying to buy the United Airlines training facility, the pilot training facility here in Denver for a long time. Why don't you go figure out how I can buy that? And that was it. There was no other instructions. And I didn't know what I was doing. And so this then went on to this thing where I had to go meet a bunch of other guys. So somebody actually finally took hold of the process. He probably said, I like that Mullen kid. Go figure out how to get him hired. And so I ended up interviewing all these people. And there was one guy who was the CEO of the firm. So Bill was the founder and chairman, but this one guy's CEO. And he wouldn't talk to me. And they finally hired me, but he was not accepting of it yet. And so I waited for him in the elevator shaft at the basement of this 4-story building for us, trying to get a meeting with him. Because I didn't want
that you could complete your project.
And so I finally caught him coming up in the elevator. I got in the elevator with him, and I did this crazy thing where it's listen, I know you don't know me. You don't want to hire me. Bill told you to hire me. But I'm going to make it, I don't know what I said, right? This is another one. But I said something of I'm going to make it work. Don't worry.
I won't let you down.
And he didn't talk to me for a year because that was his old school style. And now he's my mentor. He's an investor in all of my funds, all 7 of my funds he's an investor in. He's coming to our LP meeting next week. This is Brian Devy's his name. So, that's how that whole Bill Daniels story started. And they literally put me on a plane the next week and I flew to LA, went to a Lakers game at the Forum, in the Forum Club, sat with Jerry Buss, right? Again, not knowing, I'm in a whirlwind of, we go out drinking late, and the next morning I catch a flight to Guam, where we had just gotten hired to sell all the radio stations, the yellow pages, and the cable TV systems in Guam. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know where Guam was. Like, it was.
I still don't even know if I know where Guam is.
You cross the timeline, you go to Hawaii, and then you're 6 hours further after you land in Hawaii. And that's how it started. And that started this international career of just luck. I mean, I went everywhere. I got to throw around the Daniels name, which meant something in some places, didn't mean anything in France, for example, and other places that I went. I end up getting involved with some young telecom executives in England, in London and Paris, end up getting to know them, ended up becoming friends, ended up becoming their bankers, ended up building a business. And that became a big international business for Daniels, which is what essentially they hired me for. We didn't know exactly if that was going to be the case. And that's why I lived in Paris, because we had a lot of stuff going on there. So I just moved there instead of going back and forth from Denver to Paris. And then I opened an office in London. And while I was in London, I met my wife, who was born and raised in LA. Right? Her father's English. So she's an Anglophile. She was over there working her first job. And so that's where we met. And, eventually we moved from London to New York City, New York to LA. And that's how we ended up here.
I'll move past, the Bill Daniels story, because I think it's really interesting to me. I know that like the times were a bit different back then than they are now, but you were with the firm for like 18 years. And so one of the things that, my dad worked at 1-800-DENTIST, and he was the CFO, and his CEO, Fred Joyle, would like always post these pictures on Facebook of how he's had employees that have been there for 15 years and 20 years and 22 years and now growing Coefficient Labs. I'm like, that's something I strive for, of like, man, like it would be so cool if all of these teammates were like with me growing. What was it about Bill, and like, what was it about that organization that like kept you so loyal to the team? And like, what was it about him in general that you look up to the most?
Well, he was very straightforward and honest, right? And he was very rewarding, very demanding. But there was a clear relationship to both of those. Okay. There wasn't some like, hey, work your ass off and maybe you'll get paid well. It was work your ass off and you're going to get paid well. And if you don't work your ass off, you're not going to be here. And so you're like, got it. That's pretty clear. There wasn't a lot of review process, because it was a money firm, right? We at the end of every year, we all saw what the revenue was for each person. And then you saw what the profits were, and the profits got divided based on your, there was some real clear metrics. But he had a great skill, he and his team, Brian, et cetera, had a great skill at bringing on people who, not trying to compliment myself, but who could be very successful at the pace they were going at that point, at that time. We actually hired several people from Wall Street who just didn't want to be on Wall Street. Didn't mean they weren't smart and worked hard and did very well on Wall Street. Didn't want to be in Wall Street. So if you looked at our firm, it was a whole bunch of guys who worked, men and women who worked at big firms, who were very successful there. I'm just like, I don't want to do this. I don't need this lifestyle. But we worked equally as hard at Daniels, but were rewarded with a much different culture, right? A much different culture in terms of the family atmosphere around it. The fact that you were working for a human that was very successful in his own right, very unique. Right. That old school entrepreneurs, right? These are all the people that build media businesses and cable TV businesses and wireless businesses. And he banked Craig McCaw, who started, McCaw Wireless, which is now AT&T Wireless. There's so many stories that no one knows anymore. Yeah. That built all these companies that we're all involved in. Yeah.
For those that don't know Bill, he basically brought like cable TV and radio to many small towns.
He's known as the father of cable TV.
The father of cable. Yeah, right.
So,
I read that. I was
so there is that benefit of working for him. We had a very cultish kind of atmosphere. We had we had really nice offices. We had an airplane. We had a chef made us lunch every day. And guess what? Lunch was at 11:30. every day. And if you didn't go to lunch at 11:30, you didn't get lunch. It wasn't like hey, this is a buffet for everybody. And Bill, I learned this over time. That was his way to keep everybody working. Like, I'm taking care of your breakfast. I'm taking care of your lunch. So just stay here and keep working. And, there was always slowly get these contests who get in earlier. Mm-hmm. And the thing with Bill, this is not a Bill Daniels advertisement. This whole thing, it turns out, because I think he was quite informative in terms of people I worked for. Definitely. And then what I've done. He had a guy, Arthur, who met the airplane every morning at what was Stapleton Airport, but then became DIA. So Denver Airport, let's say. He got the first New York Times, the first Financial Times, the first Wall Street Journal in town.
Like out of the gate,
got he wanted off the plane. I mean, he was such
like a sushi chef.
He was such a baller in Denver. If you go to DIA Airport in the Terminal 3, his plane's the one that's hanging. It's called the Bill Daniels Cablevision Tool. Wow. His private plane. I flew on that. But because it was the very first plane that ever flew at DIA. Right? First plane that ever landed at DIA was Bill's plane, which of course he arranged with the governor and the mayor and the whole thing. So point is, he'd get the newspapers. Arthur would take the newspapers to Bill. Bill would be done with them, clipped out things that he wanted you to read or be aware of, put on your desk before you ever got in. And you kept trying to get there earlier so that you
just got like show him that like
before, but you could never do it. And then you'd walk in your offices, the days of voicemail, that actually people checked. And sure enough, if you walked into your office, and we used to get there at 6:30, 7 a.m. every day, walk in and your light's bleeping, 9 out of 10 times it's Bill. And it was, hey, Mark, hey, great job on that deal you did last week. Or, hey, Mark, I just read this article in Financial Times about this deal in Spain. Are you working on it?
Just a
little, like, or hey, I was just looking at this deal in the Wall Street Journal. It sounds like something we should be involved in. So
you're like, okay, I guess I know what I'm doing today.
So that kind of stuff was unique and hard to replicate.
It's also a lot different than a lot of the mentality in today's culture of the balance between just in general, like certainly like my parents, like they've told stories like that. And I even feel like in my journey, it was like, I got to get in early before everyone. I got to stay late. But now I think that it seems like there's a bit of a culture shift when it comes
sometimes,
to that.
If I show up, usually in before Tyler and Jen, and if I have something to do that morning, like something with the kids or something, and I show up at 8:39, Tyler's like, half day. He gives me shit if I show up a little later than normal. I'm like, I did more than you did before you ever woke up, which is not true since he has twins now, so he's up way before me. But I think what I wanted to bring out of this part of the conversation is that the more I talk about this stuff, it ages me, it dates me, which is life. But that's life. Like I have a lot of life experience because I've been I'm older than most, and I've been around, not older than most, but I've been around and had these experiences, which I've been really lucky. And so if you bookmark or have bookends of my career, there was almost a 20-year career in investment banking. And now we're like in year 11 of this VC. So I've had this completely different careers, but related. And that investment banking career, most people don't know about. Like, if they listen to a podcast, great, and they get to hear this stuff. It's not like I tell them all this stuff.
For sure.
Of course not. But it does inform me. It does inform the way I have my experiences and how I feel comfortable with people. Mm-hmm. How I can ask you questions about your family and do it in a way that is respectful and just interested, as opposed to trying to find some sort of information. And all that comes from the luck I had over the first 20 years of my career, which was living in all these places, working with entrepreneurs from all those different countries, 30 different countries. There's no mold for an entrepreneur, right? They're different. Everyone's different in a different way. It's like every human. So I just feel like I've taken all that time. I had this wild career for 20 years that almost no one knows about or cares about. I get it, because they think I'm just a venture capitalist, and they think I've only been doing venture my whole life. And you'd really have to dig deep to it's not hidden, but you'd have to go kind of dig deep. So I take all that information my experiences and try to use that as an advantage now. So what I mean by that is taking all those experiences of those experiences allow me to be a good psychologist, a good friend, a good mentor, a good decision maker, a good idea maker, and to impart that kind of stuff to the founders that we work with. I hope. So that's one part of I'm just one part of the Bonfire team, and we're all trying to bring different elements to the conversation. If you think about Brett, for example, if I could jump back to Bonfire, Brett worked for the Siebold Systems, Tom Siebold. Again, you'd have to go back a little bit to know that he was one of the big software pioneers, hard software, sending disks out. And then one of the guys who used to work for Siebold was Mark Benioff. Mark Benioff worked for Siebold, goes and starts Salesforce, the first SaaS company, hires Brett away. Brett's one of the first 50 employees at Salesforce. Salesforce is the OG SaaS company.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Brett worked for them for 12 to 14 years. And in that capacity, like any founding startup that we all deal with, they wear tons of different hats.
For sure.
He was head of sales engineering, head of sales, head of M&A, head of marketing. He did all those hats. And all that stuff, again, all those experiences
tools
he had.
in the tool belt.
Again, exactly. So he can pull different tools out and have different conversations with different founders in different places they are in their lives. Look, we all have families. We do. And, we have teenagers. We have things going on in our lives. We're all trying to learn from each other. And so we all have tools that we try to use when we're working with our founders. And so hopefully that's what some people mean when they say, wow, you guys are really different.
In our next segment, Mark shares key advice on how to form a solid connection with startup founders. So make sure to stay tuned.